I think you muted by yourself.
I'm trying to unmute myself. Does that work?
Okay, yeah, it's okay.
Thanks very much, Jessica. It's always a pleasure to share a bit of time with you guys. I think we have a pretty interesting, broad-ranging panel discussion now. This is happening live, or at least live at the point in time when I'm speaking to you, as opposed to the pre-recorded version. I think we're having Jose Antonio later joining and sharing some views with us. But for the rest of the panel, we're going to try and tackle a couple of major topics, try and get different views and opinions from different areas of the world, different experiences. We have a mixture of sort of utility, developer, financier type perspective. My personal angle, I tend to work Europe, Southeast Asia, Middle East. Those are my sort of geographical areas of interest. But I'm not here to really talk much more than sort of lead the conversation with everybody else. Let me just start by going down the list of questions that we have, and I'm quite happy to sort of take views and opinions from various people to sort of push you out there. There's one on, we're going to start with a conversation which Xinjiang just mentioned from WoodMac. She just mentioned the idea around the LCOE, levelized cost of electricity for solar, and how that's making significant inroads as to how it is that that's sort of drawing out the solar economics are really driving the whole issue. So I just wanted to have a sort of bit of a sort of round table sort of feedback. Maybe Gonzalo, you can start by giving us a bit of a feel for how it is that's evolving, especially with respect to the latest events in the sort of beginning of this year, where we've actually seen prices stop falling, I suppose. So do you think we will go back to trend? What's your view on that?
Prices stop falling indeed. This is a trend that we have seen this year. It's rather going into the opposite direction. But as you correctly said, I mean, LCOE is I would say the key KPI or the key task that we have in our industry. And this is also something where Trina is spending, I can say almost all our efforts in how to reduce it, and so that we make solar electricity very competitive with other electricity sources. As you can imagine, we are investing a lot of time on innovation and resources for solar modules. So we have introduced this year the Vertex family, which is based on our 210 technology, quite a new technology. We're one of the drivers in the market, and we're manufacturing all these modules in brand new factories that we're building up, and that are already working, some of them. I mean, just to give you an idea, in October, probably read it in the press that we announced that we will invest more than $3 billion over the next 18 months. And this is, of course, focusing especially on this new technology that gives us more power on the module side. It also has a very unique low voltage module design, so that we can do longer strings. So this also helps to reduce the BOS costs, especially on the utility side. And I think another important thing on our side that we're doing to reduce further all of this is not just to look at the modules, but also looking at the other components that make up for project, right? So I'm thinking right now, for instance, on the trackers. I believe that most of the people here in this panel listening to us, they know that we own the tracker manufacturer called Enclave. It's now 100% Trina. We renamed it to Trina Tracker since I think it's July, August last year, 2020. And what does it mean? I mean, where do I see the benefit for the industry, and of course also for us? It means that we have integrated the Trina Tracker R&D and the management system also with the module and storage R&D that Trina has. So we have launched the result of it has been the launch of the Vanguard and Agile Tracker that it has been developed especially for this ultra high power modules that we have launched into the market, again, the Vertex series. And there we see, of course, also through these trackers that we also have on the tracker side, BOS savings. We also work together with inverter manufacturers, as you can imagine, to see how they can cope with these changes and how they can support us and can be of benefit for our partners. So Trina is the initiator of the 600 watt Photovoltaic Open Innovation Ecological Alliance, which was founded in July 2020. And this way, we're making sure that all the component manufacturers from silicon, wafer, cell, modules, trackers, inverters, also downstream customers, that they are all joining efforts into this alliance, and they're joining this alliance so that we can make the system, again, not only the module, but the whole system more competitive, cheaper, and this way reduce the LCOE costs.
So compressing, so whilst there may be a blip with respect to sort of commodity prices sort of taking the wrong turn and that being filtered through, we're still seeing or can still expect a lot of developments and additional technological innovation from the producer side to basically make sure that the costs keep ratcheting down, right? I mean, that's
correct.
To summarize, right? I wonder, Ali or Daniel, whether you could chip in on this particular point on the sort of where it is that we think we can continue compressing LCOEs, and is that a reasonable assumption?
Yeah, sure. If I may comment on this. So this is Ali from Goodwe. So Gonzalo mentioned a lot of couple of interesting points, and of course, modules and inverters are one of the main components for sure in the system. And while compressing the LCOE, I mean, we look into us as an inverter manufacturer. We look on the capital expenditure on one side, of course, but also on the operational expenditures, which both contribute to reducing the LCOE. And so if we talk in terms of investments and capital expenditure, the whole system is at the end what counts for the customer and for the developer. And manufacturers from all different components need to make sure that the overall system is optimized in this perspective. So if I take the example of the panels now going into 210 millimeter cells, that brings a challenge for the inverters that the currents are increasing, the input currents, and the former inverter technologies, a lot of them are not able to cope with that, which means the beneficial added power of and generation coming from the panels wouldn't be used by the inverter to be fed into the grid. And this, what we, for example, as Goodwe, as an inverter manufacturer, what we have launched with our new HT series going up to 250 kilowatt per inverter, is that we are also able to deal and cope with this high currents coming from the panels, meaning that whatever benefits coming from panels, the inverter as well is able to we're also looking into integrating as many features, as many components which used to be external, to have them integrated into one inverter, one device, talking about DC connection boxes, talking about string monitoring, talking about anti-PID, talking about monitoring, and all of that features, which used to be external, and now integrating everything in an inverter. As an example, our HT series helps reducing the overall number of components, reducing the efforts of installation, and bringing the benefits to the EPC to reduce their costs, and to the developer as well to have a lower expenditure investment. On the maintenance side, so the operation is, of course, I mean, that's a part which for 20, 25, 40 years in the calculation, how we make sure that failure rates are low. How do we make sure that maintenance is easy? With the inverters, we enable remote access to all the plant data, remote updates, remote configuration. The system is self-learning from the behavior of the panels on the site, also learning about the irradiation data on site and adapting to that in order to generate alarms and messages to the operation, to the maintenance companies, to be able to judge the performance, and also to avoid going out to site for maintenance purposes while it's maybe not necessary to do so.
Great,
so overall, looking into investment and also on operational costs.
Got it. So again, it's not just an issue around production of the modules or the technology. It's also about an integration role as well.
Absolutely,
Yep.
yes.
Daniel, I wondered if you had anything to chip in on this particular subject.
Yeah, I think from our side, obviously, because we obviously installing and financing systems throughout globally and throughout Asia Pacific. I mean, the lessons learned nowadays to bring LCOEs down is just you have to look at it holistically. In the past, obviously, modules were one of the key driver when it comes to costs. But when we are building projects now here in the region, you have to look at all angles, and that from financing to O&M to the capex side, the cost regards to the supply, and then also increasing the yield again, like for example, Gonzalo said, by using trackers now, even in Southeast Asia now, which in the past were not done very often. So you just have to look at all angles now to get the LCOEs down. It's not that easy anymore because everybody is squeezed already. And that includes also early development stages. Again, expectations from the local developers also have to fit. And you can see also that more and more large scale international developers go down really greenfield to further also reduce costs there. So it's from the beginning, from the initial site selection all the way through to O&M, you really have to look at everything now to ensure that you have the most efficient LCOEs possible.
A question then, thanks for that, Daniel. A question then, sort of switching slightly to the issue of targets, you know, government level or regional level. And I thought I'd try and bring in Chatai and Clotilde on this one, just given your specific experience in Thailand, Vietnam, Southeast Asia, I suppose, in general. How do you see governments trying to set themselves up to try and meet particular targets? We heard some interesting background from Xinxiang from Woodmac with respect to how it is that, you know, the growth might be coming less from sort of large scale and more from sort of smaller scale. How do you think that's going to be rolling out in different types of markets? And what's your experience, or at least what's your visibility on things like that? Chatai, do you want to have a first go at it? You might be on mute.
Oh, okay. Hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I would like to share this idea as the view of the project developers. Now we're developing the hydro floating solar hybrid with the 45 megawatt capacity. I think when we're talking about the LCOE, it's always concerned on the three factors. That's right. That is CapEx, OpEx, and energy yield. To lower LCOE, we will consider how to reduce the expenditure on the CapEx and OpEx. And another way, we consider how to increase the energy yield. For reduce CapEx, we will try to optimize the expenditure of the turnkey engineering, documents, and construction. Now, let's deep dive to how we can do. To optimize the conceptual design at the project. As our project to utilize unused space, we will design location on the unused water surface of our dam reservoir. We require no additional land cost. Next is to utilize the existing facility. We will decide to share existing access out to hydropower plants with the new floating solar project, such as for the transmission cable, transformer, and pre-connection system. This can help in significant cost reduction. To achieve economy of scale, we will decide the capacity of the floating solar, not over maximum capacity of the existing hydropower plants. This capacity had to be big enough to be economy of scale. According to our study, scale it should be around 20 to 30 megawatts at that time. In addition, we should create for the competitive EPC bidding among the high potential contractor and enable effective project management. Those will help significantly reduce for the overall CapEx. And for reduce OpEx, normally we estimate the OpEx around 2 or 3% of the CapEx. This expenditure is operation and maintenance cost during the right time of the project to 25 years. OpEx reduction can be achieved by applying smart technology and automatic control. For maintenance, we will transform preventive maintenance to be predictive maintenance with the AI integration. In the term of increased energy yield, we will decide to use the high performance equipment such as the high efficiency PV module and smart inverter, and to integrate the forecast system to maximize the power generation. Moreover, we will combine the energy storage to the hybrid system in the future in order to enhance the stability for smooth hybrid generation and time-shifting energy from the day to the night time. Yes.
Okay, so the idea there is around trying to sort of optimize with storage to a certain extent. Also, Clotilde, how do you see this whole issue around trying to achieve targets, you know, in the markets in which you guys operate?
Well, I think Vietnam is a perfect example of how to achieve targets, because especially with what happened within the rooftop market. So Vietnam had actually set a target, I believe, of 1 gigawatt by 2025 of rooftop, and 9 gigawatts were built in 2020, despite also, you know, a pandemic going on and obviously a worldwide crisis. So I think Vietnam really showed that if you put the right regulation in place, things happen and targets can be achieved. So basically, of course, the first step was to put on the feed-in tariff, because Vietnam has the specificity to have really, really cheap electricity coming from the national grid. So having feed-in tariff really helped developer to make sure that they would get the IRR, they would get the return on investment. And that attract a lot of international developer and international investors. But I think it's not only the feed-in tariff, I think it's also the clarity and making the regulation kind of easier on developer. So in the first feed-in tariff were developed in 2017, they stopped in 2019, and a few built with the feed-in in Vietnam, but we really see a hit with the second one in 2020. And I believe this is because the regulation was a lot easier on developer, with the possibility for developer to sell the electricity directly to off-takers and not to go through kind of complicated lease-like contracts. So you got a lot more investors coming in, willing to come and invest money. That just make them a bit more trustworthy towards Vietnamese government. And it was obviously sending the right message, saying that Vietnam was doing that, was being very serious about it, and was seeing it, you know, were in it in the long run. So I think that just proved that, you know, if you set up the right regulation, so feed-in tariff, but also making regulation clear long term for developer, that just make it much easier to hit your targets. You're gonna attract
Yeah, I always tell people that, you know, one thing is you're just taking a contract with the government under a feed-in tariff regime. The other one is you have to be sure that there aren't any sort of hiccups along the way with respect to your ability to spill, you know, excess energy, and not to be penalized inadvertently with things like that, which, for example, was one of the issues that they had in Spain for a while. So let me bring in Jaime and Jörn on this one, just on the same type of subject of, so, you know, well, but actually I'm trying to mix it, the second and the third point about how it is that regulation, or what is it about the governments that you're aware of, that where you guys operate with respect to sort of trying to achieve renewable targets. And the second one being, you know, have you noticed, by the way, with respect to deployment, has there been any sort of slowdown because of COVID, or what's been your experience?
Hi, Kim, thank you very much. Basically in Spain, where Soto Solar is mainly based on, we have a strong support from the government for renewable energy. Basically, there's a PNIEC plan, which is calling for 37 gigawatts in 2030. There's a lot of renewables that need to come online to achieve that plan, and as a support plan for that is the government auctions that are taking place over 6 years. The 2020 auction took already place in, well, it basically was spilled into January 2021, but that was the 2020. So this year, later this year, there will be coming the next auction with a minimum awarded capacity of 1.8 gigawatt for PV. And I think to remain 1.5 gigawatt for wind. That is obviously a tremendous support for the renewables, because and in fact, some advisors are mentioning that maybe this is too much support and it's actually distortion in the free market, and basically will get more renewables that the free market would on its own provide. Battery storage is coming online for sure as a good fit. I saw earlier one question about batteries being able, I mean, not being so good if they are actually storing energy from polluting sources. That's absolutely correct. Obviously, what we want batteries for is to store the renewable energy, because the sort of the weak side of the renewable energy is obviously the variability, and the variability means that it is available at times when it's not necessarily the consumption time. We have got used to consuming energy 24 hours a day, so we want electricity available all day through, and obviously renewables have different profiles. PV only generates obviously during the day, wind generates day and night, but obviously only when it's windy. So the idea, obviously, the energy transition that we are living means we will be installing a lot more renewables in the system, obviously with the excess capacity during the generation time, because we need to store that excess capacity for later on when we don't have that generation, but we, as public and consumers, we want to use that energy, obviously. There's also, I mean, there's a lot of movements. For example, this morning we got to know this Spanish government proposal to basically reduce the incomes from renewable sources that, from sources that don't generate CO2, that don't pollute, and that actually might be counterintuitive. Basically, the government is suggesting that non-polluting energy sources should reduce their income. I mean, there's some logic to it, but it's gonna be very interesting how that comes through. The basic principle is when the energy price is set with a polluting source, obviously they take into account this cost of CO2 that they have to buy to deliver that energy. When it's a non-polluting source, gets that price that has set in the market for everyone, because it's a marginal price, then the problem is that they interpret that non-polluting sources are getting a windfall profit. The good news, at least, is this only applies as the current draft is to generating installations installed before 2005. So all the renewable energy that we are installing is out. This mainly applies to basically nuclear and hydro capacity that we have in Spain.
Jörn, do you want to chip in?
Yes, of course. I just unmuted. So thanks a lot. I'm looking from the IPP standpoint, operating like in Japan, so Asia, Chile, South America, Puerto Rico, America, and Europe, Spain, France, Italy, and the UK. So for us, of course, very important is to be able to reach the targets is a stable regulation and framework, especially if we are investing for the long time, for 30, 40 years. So any later regulation change, be it wheeling charges in Japan, tariff adjustments, other costs, of course, having an impact on the financial model, and of course on how the sponsors, lenders, and of course the investors are looking into the market. So based on this, we are carefully watching the regulatory framework, and of course the framework we see in a lot of countries are still lacking behind the technology, like what Jaime said, storage. In a lot of countries, the regulation is not there for private to invest into storage, linked to storage, and the revenue streams are not so clearly kind of regulated, written down, that you have the opportunity, either capacity market or this or that, but you cannot have the variety to improve your investment. On top of this, we operate since nearly 8-9 years in Puerto Rico, storage facilities, and due to the Caribbean and ramping up and down grid requirements, having data per month, which is unbelievable from the system, and the learnings we would like to give to other countries. However, as I said, regulation framework, open up of the market is not there. That sometimes we would like to invest, but we cannot because we are not allowed or we don't see the revenues. Maybe as another link, coming to what the colleague said before here on the call from LCE, we are also very interested in new technologies which are coming up. However, based on maybe the history we have seen in the solar industry, how can we guarantee our performance of the new equipment? You know, there's new experiences. There's the options to improve directly your LCE. However, if you look over 30 years, how will be the equipment degradation, aging, failure rates over the long term, which is very important. And I think there the industry can do a lot in the guarantees they provide to give the investor and the lenders the kind of the safe feeling that during their lifetime there is no issues with the equipment.
Thanks, Jörn. One question that's related to that is, well, I suppose if you switch into your argument of, it's also something Clotilde brought up about security, you know, I suppose securities, the vision of where it is your income is going to come from, whether you're market-based, whether it's feed-in tariff, whether you believe the government's long-term projection, you know, support, etc. Whether we go via government auctions, as sort of European governments are trying to do as well. One of the questions that I had related to that is how do we think that that's going to be impacted by the change in technology, like the introduction of additional batteries or things like that, which change the sort of mix and make it, in a sense, potentially more complicated to absorb and to bring on renewables and to stabilize the system. And I just wondered whether Ali or Chai could sort of bring some sort of thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, sure. I can talk about it from, I mean, our perspective as a manufacturer here for inverters, but also for batteries and storage. I mean, according to Wood Mackenzie, we are the global leader of storage inverters in the residential market with 15% market share. So I want to bring a bit the vision from or the perspective from the residential market, and we can discuss on how this can be projected into the utility scale. So we see from the residential markets that there are a lot of needs basically on the market. I mean, it's reducing the electricity costs, it's becoming independent, it's having the backup, and this has been driving the demand for batteries in this market tremendously. I mean, the growth in the market is great. And so we are seeing growth in Europe, in Africa, in Australia, in the US, global growth in all of these segments. And challenges, one is, of course, the batteries to be available for all of this application. I mean, there is a huge demand on batteries from different industries. I mean, from our renewable, but also the car industry and all other industries are asking for batteries. So that's for sure one challenge, the availability of the batteries, and also on how to bring, so for larger scale projects, how to bring the right technology that also is able to providing or fulfilling the needs for reserving capacities, for peak shaving to reduce the power peak demands and so on. And with that, we're bringing new inverter. Again, the inverter is the unit managing all of this component in the system. We're bringing a new BTC series for a storage inverter for commercial applications that it's going to be able, or that is able to combine all of this needs and to manage all of this needs of reserving the capacity for backup, of reducing the electricity bill, and of also reducing the peak demand. So by using the peak shaving function in order to provide the right technological solution for this larger scale projects.
Chai, how does the sort of evolving technology affect your Thailand or EGAT's perspective as to how it is that that renewables will sort of roll out in your country?
Is for the in our country. We will create for a sustainable firm green energy that is key to support for the growth of solar installation in Thailand. I will share development guidelines that we help to moving toward to this goal. It consists of the cost, technology, and social environments. In the cost, we will reduce expenditure that exists in the panel. And to enable for the feasible price and to be competitive with the other in the markets. For technology, we will deal in the latency of renewable energy with smart technology in order to provide firm green energy which will be not effect to the main power grid. We will begin with creating the hybrid system to creating for the flexibility in the power generation, and then we combine the energy storage to enhance stability of the hybrid generation. It can provide more power and supply more longer. Finally, we will build the renewable control center with the AI integration. This center will control all RE power plants across the country with one platform, ensuring RE security in the country. In the term of the social and environment, we will try to mitigate the negative impact on the environment and social by using eco-friendly materials such as for the HDPE pontoon with the food grade. We also conduct the real-time monitoring for the fast response to further preventive measures. In addition, we will improve the community quality life, creating new landmarks in the area, which will help drive the local economic growth and sustainable livelihoods.
Got it. Then let's shift a little bit to, if we can't trust the governments, I suppose, to give us some degree of explicit and support. There's the whole issue around the corporate off-takers, the PPA market. There's no such thing as a standard PPA, by the way, even within one known jurisdiction or another. But from the perspective that these are all bespoke and offering sort of different opportunities, we're seeing much more demand side participation with respect to sort of the INC sectors coming in and being willing to sort of consider different types of options. I wonder, from that extent, who'd be sort of Clotilde, whether you guys get involved in sort of those type of conversations, and how you see the PPA type market picking up wherever it is that the government leaves off. Views on that?
Well, that's actually exactly what's happening in Vietnam right now, because the feed-in tariff stopped in 1st of December, and since then we haven't had any news on the regulation for 2021. We actually believe there's not going to be any feed-in tariff this year, maybe 2022. They're going to decrease a lot. I mean, the objective were completely over-exceeded in 2020. So the Vietnamese government is pushing the priority to PPA, exactly as you mentioned, and to sell the electricity directly to off-takers. The Vietnamese market is really, really focused on rooftop, and that's what we are doing at Chai-Oak. That's working really well. International investors, at least the people that we are working with, are much more keen on working with private off-takers than actually working with the Vietnamese national electricity provider or the Vietnamese government. They see private off-taker more credit-worthy. Last year, you had a lot of local developer in Vietnam building solar rooftop for the sole purpose of selling everything to the national electricity provider, to the government. That's with no feed-in tariff, obviously that's not an option anymore. And because there were so many projects built, we believe that there's going to be some sort of regulation in place to make sure that there's not too much energy put back into the grid. A lot of projects are already limited. There's a lot of solar farms that have been developed in the last few years that can't sell everything back into the grid in Vietnam. So PPA is definitely the way forward. That's what everyone is looking at. For rooftop is working really well. That's that's what's going to be developed only in 2021, and this is enough to attract a lot of stakeholders in the market. We hope that we're going to be able to do direct PPAs for offsite projects. So that is not available in Vietnam yet, but because the particularity of Vietnam is to have so many factories, so many more are coming in the country, and Vietnam is becoming one of the leader in the world for manufacturing. That means all of those big companies, all of those international companies need to have access to renewable energy. And right now with rooftop, there's only so much you can do. So the next step definitely is the DPPA for private off-takers to be able to buy directly off-site electricity. Everyone's waiting for it. We are really, really keen on it. Not available yet. We expect by the end of this year the pilot program to be there. But that's what's going to happen in this country, and all investors are looking forward to it. Because that means basically you're going to be dealing with really big international corporation, selling electricity directly to Nike, Adidas, or to their supply chains. It's obviously credit-worthy companies, and it's seen as really safe.
Yeah, safe indeed. How do you see, Daniel and Jaime, how do you see the corporate PPA market from the perspective of you guys trying to roll out your business models?
Should I go?
Shoot.
Okay. Well, yes. There was some question actually on COVID-19 and impact on corporate PPAs. I think the interest is there because obviously the corporates are very much turned on regarding costs and cost savings. So corporate PPAs are a tool for them to save costs. The problem that COVID has created, in my view, is not so much about the interest on corporate PPAs, but the bankability of these corporate PPAs or these corporate off-takers. Basically, because of the situation in the outlook, I think banks are generally a bit more reluctant to share the risk, and there's some challenges in making these corporate PPAs bankable and therefore raising financing, which obviously is the whole point of making a PPA, one of the key points. Obviously, the other one making the IRR more strong for the shareholder. So from that perspective, I mean, at Soto Solar, we are dealing with the whole range from auto consumption for industrial and commercial consumers. So that's behind the meter and through the grid auto consumption, and up to large scale. And obviously, we're very interested in this corporate PPA, so and very active in this market.
Daniel, do you want to chip in? We can't hear you.
No, you should. Sorry for that.
Yeah,
no, I said for us it's crucial. We see the shift from PPAs in one market after the other, in APAC particularly, but for us also globally. Australia was always either merchant or PPA market. Thailand is pretty much driven by PPAs when it comes to rooftops. That's the only market there, besides some exceptional big projects now, for example, from EGAT. Vietnam already mentioned. And we see also even the switch to PPA discussions now in Korea and Japan. We are talking the first commercial PPAs in Japan now. So even there, it is the future in the end. And as mentioned by before, it gives you in a lot of, especially Southeast Asian countries, better credit worthiness than even in government FIT partly. There are questions, COVID and others slowed certain things down, but it's definitely the future and the key area for us where we're focusing on at the moment.
The bankability, I suppose, of the corporate off-taker, whether they're investment grade or not, really matters. Clotilde made that point. I was just wondering how important that positioning is. I mean, at the end of the day, whether somebody's creditworthy or not really depends on the relationship they have with their banks. And I suppose local banks take a particular interest as to what the specifics are. I wonder, Jörn, whether you have something to share, you know, given the international experience you guys have, how it is that you treat different markets differently with respect to sort of entry into potential corporate offtake agreements. And what do you see the particular appetite for that type of risk between different types of lenders?
Yeah, I can do this. Thanks. So the lender changing, so the market is changing because in a lot of countries the feed-in tariff is at an end. However, the lenders really require I don't want to say they would like to have the triple rated, A-rated off-taker, which you not always can provide. So you need to deal with a lot of commercial and financial aspects to make this possibility to fly. So we see in a lot of markets this coming, and we have from the past feed-in tariff projects and private PPAs, which also are coming, that a lot of opportunities are in the market that you need to offer a different service, which means not only the duck curve or just the solar curve, the sun is shining and then you sell it. If you have, for example, data centers, they want 24/7 green electricity. So how do you get it in the night? So your product, your PPA is also getting more complicated. Like I would like to say in the future, as a maybe anagram, in the past 50 years ago, we went to the CAP and we went into and we needed to pay cash. Then it came the credit card, and today we pay with a phone. In the future, I don't know, with a finger trip or with a face or with something else. So for the drive is the same. The payment for the whole chain is getting more complicated, and the same is in the past was easy. You connected at a special date, you got this tariff, and then you're safe for 20 or 25 years. Now you come to the corporate or private PPA price merchandise, you have different risk, and with this also your product is still electricity and you feed it into the same grid, but the rest is getting more complicated, which is then giving opportunity for creativity, for partnerships, for extending your business.
So
does it answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I think it brings up the idea that it's not just the whole drive towards deploying additional renewables and what's generally been speaking is a sort of top-down, vertically integrated in many circumstances energy supply system, electricity supply system, is that we're actually passing a lot more of the responsibility to the developer, to the demand side. And that's something which we're seeing, even though it might be pushed by legislation, but through directives in a European context, you actually see that globally. Everyone is really trying to be much more imaginative. I always like to say to juniors that came to start working with me, I'd say, look, we're not paying you money. This is not fun. We need you to start exercising your imagination and trying to think about how it is that you come up with a better product, a better service, a better potential solution. So let me go back to one of the particular points.
Maybe,
yeah, go ahead.
Maybe can I add something? Yesterday, I had a very interesting day. I took a small break, and maybe you see it in the back. We have a very lovely sunshine. So every PV operator is happy. The sun is shining. The PV panels produce electricity, and you can sell it. However, I had half an hour rain, and the sun was shining. So yeah, I saw your eyes going up. I was sitting out on my balcony, said, my goodness, my PV system on the roof is spinning and the rain is there. So like when we came to the future, and this is just from the imaginary world, the perfect day. We have wind, we have sun, and we have rain. So hydro is being filled up. The Run River and the reservoirs are being filled up. The wind is blowing, the sun is shining. So every renewable is producing. I think we will get a grid consistencies, we get problems. So the whole setting from the past, which was easy utilities and they can control everything, all of this is changing, getting more complicated, which developer owners, IPPs, we all need to find together ideas to get more carbon out of the world and get more green. And this
Yeah,
is for
I
me
think that's a
part-
nice. I think that's a nice ending statement. I think there are other areas that still remain to be discovered. Chai mentioned hybrids. We've talked a little bit with Ali about where it is that we go with respect to sort of storage and stuff. I think it's quite interesting. I'd like to just leave a last word with Gonzalo if he wants. We have to wrap up now. So if you want to just have a little quick sort of overview of how you see the next few years with respect to how the business models will evolve, Gonzalo, and how you guys are set up. How do you see that's going to be evolving?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the good thing is that after listening to all my colleagues, I have the impression that we're going in the right direction. Well, I knew it before, but now I'm 100%, 110% convinced. Just as Jörn said, I mean, even when it's raining, the panels are manufacturing energy. Probably, Jörn, that's because it's Trina panels. Who knows? And no, but seriously, I mean, as I said before, I mean, we're investing, and this is how we started, right? Module prices are going up. And the good thing at Trina is that we're not just looking at module. We're looking at the whole system and how to reduce the cost, and not only how to reduce the cost, but as you're now coming back to you, also how to reduce the CO2 exposure, right? I mean, we're also looking into how to reduce in our production, the electricity consumption, the water consumption, so that we also help to hit the agendas. For instance, I'm talking now from the European perspective, the agenda we have in Europe to become climate neutral. And again, coming back, it's not only modules, just as Jörn also said, we have to look onto the trackers, where we have Trina tracker into storage, which I think will become more and more important. Also looking into the surplus, into how to generate and then distribute the energy. And this is all activities, that we're focusing on and manufacturing it. And for me, this is clearly the future of our industry, but also of our planet and of our environment. So this is why I'm really happy that we were touching all these topics during this discussion.
Net zero by 2050. That's the ambition. The IEA just put out an interesting report, which I think is full of extraordinarily ambitious targets that will never be achieved. But at the end of the day, if we don't have the ambition, if we don't have the will, if we can't see that particular target, we're never even going to try to move towards it. So I'd like to take just the opportunity to thank all the panelists for their contributions. I think this is one of these areas where we have to keep an eye out. I think there'll be lots of developments. Keep an eye out at the international level. I'd like to thank Energy Box for having brought people from different sort of walks of life, different jurisdictions, because whilst the technology and the nuts and bolts, if you will, are all the same, I think that their application and how they get rolled out in different markets will present us with different challenges. And I'm very happy to have shared this time with you guys. Guys and girls, I should say, to basically sort of lay out how it is that things may evolve. Let me hand back to Jessica. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, all of our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Okay, so let's stage we move to the most exciting moment, and we got